Another week has come and gone. Pops, what is going on the used car market? Are prices still going up? They starting to come down? What do we have here?
We have wholesale prices continue to go up. The pace of increase has slowed a tick, not much, on the
a 100th of a point, ladies and gentlemen, a hundredth of a point.
That's a tick.
Literally a tick.
On the truck and SUV segment, it was 0.04 of a point, but on the car segment, it was 0.06 of a point that it went up from the week before. The key, in way I'm looking at it, is if we look at what has historically happened, the years 2017 to 2019, pre-pandemic, this week we should have seen about a 0.3 of a point drop in the car segment values, and yet we saw slightly more than 0.2 of a point increase. So it's a half a point over and above where historically it would have been.
Definitely. But
yes.
I think the bigger trend here, Dad, is that we're starting to see a deceleration in the appreciation of used cars on the wholesale markets. For example, Dad, compact cars, which we have seen price appreciation, aggressive price appreciation on the wholesale market, their rate of gain was the lowest we've seen since the segment went positive back on March 21st. So for months, literally months, compact cars every single week at the auction have appreciated significantly. And they did again this week, but it was the smallest appreciation we've seen amongst compact cars. The reason we've seen compact cars and subcompact cars increase in value so much of this trend that we've seen so far in 2022, gas prices going up, so compact and subcompacts are generally more fuel efficient. And just a price point, Dad, there's more buyers who are looking for sub $20,000, sub $15,000 cars. Compact and subcompacts are some of your only options. I think what we're starting to see here now, this is one of the trends that we're seeing, the appreciation, how aggressive that appreciation will be amongst those vehicles, those phenomena. Maybe they're starting to lose a little bit of steam. At least that's how I interpreted the data.
Well, I think when you compare it to the type of increases we saw last year in 2021, which I think started probably sometime in March, if I remember correctly, or maybe even a little earlier, the amount of increases we're seeing this year are significantly less than the rocket ship of increases we saw last year.
Definitely.
Having said that, the cars still seem to be considerably overvalued for what they are and where they should be relative compared to historic levels.
Yeah, I mean, no one's going to argue that. Like, used cars last year on the wholesale market appreciated 50+% on the retail market, 35-40%, and they've still appreciated this year. I think, though, part of our responsibility is what's the trend? What are we seeing and how do we interpret it? I think we're starting to see a little bit of a deceleration. Now, we've always talked about, and I want to pull up the data here about full-size luxury crossovers and SUVs because they still continue to take it pretty well in terms of depreciation. We've talked about it before, Dad. New car production is what we think is the primary driver. The new car supply is the primary driver for used cars. We got some good chip news this past week from BMW and Mercedes-Benz, Daimler. Maybe we're starting to see like, hey, new car production's coming back a little bit, and so used car values are going to come down a touch or like pause on the acceleration train.
I agree with that to a certain extent. The unfortunate reality is even if BMW and Daimler can produce a greater number of cars than they had thought they might be able to at this particular point in time, those cars are going to be 2023s, not 2022s, which will automatically have an MSRP increase, number one. And number two, it still doesn't alleviate the problem that most of the production that's being done by most of the manufacturers is pre-sold prior to it ever getting to the dealerships. So we're still not addressing the demand issue with an adequate supply issue for the new cars. So it'll still take a while to see a real shift in used car values. Want to know who the good dealer is in your neighborhood? Go to joinyaa.com and check out our crowdsourced dealer reviews. All of our community members coming together to help one another.
Now, I want to talk about another player in the wholesale market, Dad, and tie this all together. Then let's look at the Manheim data, because we also got data from Cox Automotive from Manheim for the full month of May. There's a line here in the wholesale section of the Black Book Weekly Report. Quote, "It doesn't seem like rental car companies are having much luck getting new inventory directly from manufacturers, but they also have not been overly competitive in the lane." Interestingly, here we did get some data from Cox Automotive showing that fleet sales for the month of May were down considerably year over year. So we still have rental car companies. Let's say consumer demand starts to wane a little bit because of economic pressures, things like that. I think the rental car companies, although they're maybe not being super aggressive right now in the lanes because prices are still really high, maybe they're looking out in their crystal ball and saying, let's just wait a couple weeks. Things will come down a touch. Let's be more aggressive then. That's my 2 cents, because fleet sales are not there right now, and that's typically where they would be getting their inventory.
Well, and if I remember correctly, I think it was about 6 or 8 weeks ago where like Hyundai and Kia said they're discontinuing fleet sales at least through the end of June, so that they could get more vehicles to the retail market. So yes, I agree with you. I think fleet sales are still well below where people like Hertz, Avis, Budget, Enterprise, much below where they would like it to be. And yes, I think they've probably taken a slight pause as to what they're willing to pay for some of these things. I'm thinking maybe they're hopeful that they have enough on-hand inventory to carry them during the summer months, but certainly we'll find out.
One other line here from the Black Book Report before we look at the Manheim data, quote, "Repossessions, recalls, and damaged vehicles are still making up a noticeable amount of the offered vehicles in lane." Dad, can you just talk briefly about how important it is to get a pre-purchase inspection right now if you're a retail customer?
It is. It has never been more important in the history of car buying to get a pre-purchase inspection. The quality of cars that are running through the wholesale auctions at the moment is probably at the lowest level it's been in decades. Dealers, because they don't have a large enough used car inventory, have been forced to bid on vehicles that they would have never considered in the past, just so they can have something on the lot. So with that said, it becomes even more important for a consumer to get a pre-purchase inspection done to find out what issues might exist in the vehicle that you're looking at purchasing.
Now, Manheim, the Cox Automotive auction house, they put out their monthly, I'm sure they do an annual report as well, but their monthly used vehicle value index. Dad, we saw the Manheim market report, the Manheim used vehicle value index increase 0.7%. So not a huge increase, not even a whole percentage point, but for the year, or compared to a year ago, we're up nearly 10%, 9.7%. So the Manheim data in April, if you remember correctly, when it was seasonally adjusted, it declined, but it actually went up. And no matter what you do this month in May, if you seasonally adjusted or don't, the prices went up. So we have continued to see the same trend we see in the Black Book data week to week. We see the same trend here in the Manheim data year over year, month over month. And every segment of vehicle, Dad, with the exception of pickup trucks, are more expensive on the wholesale and on the retail used car market now today than they were in May of last year. Compact cars up 15%, luxury cars 13%, midsize cars 12%, pickups down almost 3%, SUVs up 10%, vans. Every video I kick myself, we should have bought a stupid van, up 27.6%, the market as a whole, up that 9.7%.
Which manufacturer offers the stupid model van? I'm just curious.
We should have contacted them,
Yes.
is what I'm thinking, Dad. That's for sure. Interestingly, and want your take on this, quote from the article or from the report, using estimates of used retail days supply based on V-Auto data, May ended at 44 days supply of inventory, which was down from 49 at the end of April, but higher than how May ended in 2021 at 37 days. So it seems like, Dad, maybe inventory levels both on the Manheim side, and we can intuit from the type of quality of cars crossing the lane of Black Book, less supply, less used car supply.
Yes, but the used car supply is holding steady in the mid 40-day range, and it has been for, I would say, a couple months now.
That's fair. That's fair. Let's talk about one other piece to this puzzle, Dad, which is rising interest rates and kind of consumer sentiment. So one other thing that the Manheim report talks about is obviously where consumer sentiment is, and consumer sentiment declined in May. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index declined in May. So we have that paired with rising interest rates, paired with the kind of flattish but slightly increasing used car values. Just seems like when you look in the crystal ball, still not a good time to be in the market if you don't need to be in the market for a used vehicle.
If you need to be in the market for a vehicle and you're looking at 2 to 3 year old vehicles, you would still be better off today if you can find a dealer that will sell you the brand new model of that without any additional dealer markup or any unwanted dealer installed accessories, because that pricing will be in many cases less than what you're going to be asked to pay for the used car that's 2 or 3 years old with miles on it. So bear that in mind if you happen to be in the market for a 2 or 3 year old pre-owned car.
Well said, Pops. Well said. Any parting shots, or we gotta wait till next week? And I think my hypothesis, it's gonna be steady Eddie for a little while here. Everything's just kind of like little increases, little decreases, little increases, little decreases. I think this is a bit of the new normal.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see any dramatic movement one way or the other for the next couple weeks, maybe month or so. The good news is that prices are not skyrocketing like they did last year. But then again, truth be told, they couldn't have. That was not sustainable. So I think the market's reflecting that.
Fair enough, Pops. Fair enough. Thanks as always.
Thank you, Handsome. Good talking to you.